Hello everyone, back tuning in to today's second video, doing the GWV Sunday Round-Up for today's second video. It's your usual eclectic mix of this and that for your Sunday afternoon viewing pleasure. So we're going to have a look at what happened in April, first of all. And we're also going to have a quick look at the Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation, see what's happening with the sea surface temperature anomalies, and there'll be other things in the video as well as the weather for the next week to 10 days. Very warm day today. Temperatures will be reaching 25, 26, possibly 27 degrees in the southeast today. And tomorrow could be even hotter, maybe at 28 in London. That's 82 Fahrenheit. It will be the hottest May Day, Bank Holiday Monday on record. So very warm summer-like conditions at the moment. We'll see how long that's expected to last for towards the end of the video when we go over the weather for the next week, 10 days. We haven't got the solar tracker today, so that'll be with you next week. The updated solar tracker will be in next week's GWV Sunday Round. Just say Solar Sunday is going to be in June, so we've pushed that back from May to June. I'll have the date for you in around a week or so's time, but it'll be sort of early June, probably not the first Sunday of June, but maybe the second Sunday of June. That's when we'll do the Solar Sunday that we should do in May, but we've had to push it back because of all of the analog stuff. And talking of analogs, we've released the 8th analogs update for the summer of 2018. That was released 10 o'clock this morning. It's here on the home page. Just scroll down the page a little bit. You'll find it above the polling count. Later on today, that video will be placed on the summer updates and forecast page with a written summary as well. Right, so let's get on with it. We're going to start off by having a look at what happened in April. So we've got the analogue here that we was working towards during the spring forecast for what was expecting to happen in April. So after the cold and block March, we was expecting the northern blocking to be in place for March with a cold month. We expect a reversion excuse me, back to a more typical type spring pattern for April. So this is the April analogue we was working towards, with an area of above average heights building down to the southwest, below average heights, that's a low pressure course, to the north of the country, and the jet stream rising back north as well. So a relatively changeable month was what we was anticipating for April, but also a warmer month, a milder month, and just a typical, more typical spring type pattern compared to the cold and blocked month that we anticipated for March. This is the actual April 2018 analogue, so this is how it actually played out in terms of the 500 millibar height anomaly. So we had this really deep trough in the middle of the Atlantic, a very deep trough there, and then we had a large ridge covering most parts of Europe. Its actual centre was across sort of eastern parts of Europe, but the ridge was covering virtually the whole of the continent, and a very, very odd sort of jet stream pattern with the jet going something like that. So placing us on the warm side of the jet stream and pulling up a lot of sort of warm southerly to southeasterly winds. So that's how the height anomaly actually was in April 2018. This is what we was forecasting. So not a close match, but I think we did get some elements right. So we had this trough in the middle of the Atlantic, quite a deep trough in the central part of the Atlantic. That turned out to be closer to us, of course, and this ridge, we did get this area of high pressure to the southwest. That was actually more centred across central parts of Europe, so kind of joining up with that ridge over there, I suppose, and forming one large area of high pressure across central parts of Europe. So we have the trough correctly in the Atlantic, although it's closer to us slightly. But overall, I mean, it's quite a strange pattern that we had during April, actually, with this deep trough in the Atlantic, but then a very, very strong ridge covering most parts of Central and Eastern Europe as well, and that really strange sort of jet stream going something like that, pulling the air up from a sort of a southeasterly type direction quite a lot. So it was an odd month, but I think we did get some elements of that correct for April. And what we did get correct is that it was a reversion to a much more a much milder spring type month. So we correctly predicted that we would have a cold March, not as cold as March 2013, but a cold and average March with wintry conditions. We had that, and then the reversion to proper spring in April, that came off, albeit from a slightly different pattern compared to what we expected. But overall, I think the spring forecast is doing quite well. Right, bring them up to date with ENSO then. So this is the cold and warm episodes by season chart from CPC, NC, EP and NOAA in the United States. So we've had another number for the latest tri-monthly period appearing in the boxes. So this is our year of 2018. That's 2017 just there. So the La Niña, we know we've had a La Niña. It was a very late starter. It didn't begin until the tri-monthly period of September, October, November. Actually, so it's a really late start to this blue number just here, minus 0.7. That was the first sort of proper La Niña type departure in terms of the temperature anomaly for that tri-monthly period. But La Niña strengthened through the end of the year, so it reached its peak for the tri-monthly period from November, December, January, going down to minus 1.0, so a degree colder than average in terms of the temperature anomaly of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. And then since then, it's been gradually waning. So through the first 3 tri-monthly periods of 2018, it's been gradually easing. The latest number in the box to appear is for the tri-monthly period of February, March and April, coming out at minus 0.6. That just about still keeps us in La Niña threshold, because to get to La Niña threshold, you have to go to minus 0.5 degrees or half a degree colder than average or lower over 5 tri-monthly periods. So that just still keeps us, for the temperature anomaly, just still keeps us within La Niña threshold. But I suspect when we get the next tri-monthly period come through for March, April, May, it will be this one just here. I suspect that will take us away from La Niña. I suspect that will come out kind of like somewhere between sort of minus 0.5 and sort of minus 0.0 in that sort of threshold. When that happens, you'll see that the number will be black, indicating we've gone back to ENSO neutral, as opposed to the blue numbers we're still getting at the moment, indicating La Niña conditions. So I think the next tri-monthly period, when it updates at the start of June, that will take us back to ENSO neutral. So this La Niña event was a weak La Niña event anyway, but the La Niña is coming to a close. We've also had an update for the QBO. So the quasi-biennial oscillation is an index that's reflecting the state of the zonal westerlies, or the strength of the zonal westerlies, essentially, across the northern hemisphere. So when you're in an easterly QBO, that's what we've been in since the middle of last year. When you're in an easterly QBO, the zonal westerlies are weakened, so they're in a weaker type state through the tropics and also impacting the northern latitudes. When you're in a westerly QBO, the zonal westerlies are strengthened. So this is more important for winter. We do look at it for summer as well, but it's a particular factor in winter forecast, because when the zonal westerlies are strengthened in a westerly QBO, it can be a signal for a milder, more Atlantic westerly type winter for the UK and Europe. Whereas when the QBO is in its easterly state in the winter, it can be a signal for colder conditions via northern blocking. So, but there are very many exceptions to that. You do get cold winters during a westerly QBO, and you get mild winters during an easterly QBO. So as always with weather, there's no guarantee. Now this chart, again coming from NOAA, goes back to 1948, depicting every month's QBO back to January 1948, but of course we're interested in 2017 and 2018. So that's 2017 just there, that's 2018 just there. The start of 2017 last year was actually still a westerly QBO phase. That carried on until the middle part of the year, but you see this number just here coming out at minus 3.18. That was the first easterly QBO month that we'd have for quite a long time. We have to go right way back to early 2015 actually to find another easterly QBO month. So we have that long run of westerly QBO condition from the second half of 2015 and lasting all the way through 2016 as well. Of course, a lot of that was down to what happened with the El Nino event. We had a Super Nino for 2015-16. So we kind of had a failure of the easy QBO, which is very unusual. The QBO is almost like a pulse or a heartbeat. It should be consistent. You shouldn't really get deviations. So what happened there was very strange, very unusual, and I don't think it had happened certainly back to the 1950s and probably further back than that. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent with that. So to bring you up to date, we went into the easterly QBO in the second half of last year. The easterly QBO strengthened through the winter, and it's still continuing now into this year. So our latest month is actually the most negative we've been with this easterly QBO phase since it started. April 2018 comes out at minus 21.41, so very strongly easterly QBO conditions at the moment, and the easterly QBO up to April anyway was still strengthening. Now, how much longer is this going to last? Typically these events last around sort of 14 months, so that will take us from where we started, which I think was June last year. That would take us to around August or September. So we're probably, the idea is that we're probably going to start to shift from the easterly to the westerly QBO during this summer. Bear in mind there is a time lag on that, however, so I don't think westerly QBO will impact this summer. Actually, I think this summer will be an easterly QBO summer. The westerly QBO will probably start around August, September if everything is working as we expect it to, but there's a time lag with that getting down through the atmosphere, so the effect probably won't be felt until towards the latter stages of the year. But there is actually no guarantee that we will go into that westerly QBO. We might continue with the easterly QBO throughout, because let's look at 2012, for example. The whole year of 2012 was an easterly QBO year, and the easterly QBO actually started in 2011. It started sort of in the autumn of 2011, and it carried on, this easterly QBO, into the first months of 2013 as well. It wasn't really until the spring of 2013 that we finally went into that westerly QBO. The easterly QBO does generally last a little bit longer, I think, than the westerly QBO, although we know that we did have that strange situation in 2015 and 16 where the westerly QBO went on a very long time, but that really was exceptional. Generally, it's the easterly QBO that will last longer, so there's no guarantee that we will go into this westerly QBO, certainly this summer, and possibly not until the autumn or the latter part of the year. And you don't really know when you've gone into either an easterly or a westerly QBO till it actually happens, so we're just going to have to keep monitoring this and see when the change takes place. That's how the sea surface temperature anomalies were looking across the ocean when we did the GWV Sunday Round-Up last week. So the three areas we're specifically interested in, we've got the ENSO region just there across the Pacific. Northern Pacific is up here, and then the Atlantic Ocean is over there. This blue sort of mass that is still there through the Pacific Ocean, that is the signature of La Niña, of the cold event, which we know is waning and looks like it's on its way out. This is the very latest from NOAA, so been very little change really. I think the La Niña signal has continued to weaken very slightly. That was last week, that's this week. I think the La Niña signal has continued to weaken very slightly over the past week. In the Northern Pacific, it remains quite cold, particularly up towards the northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean around Canada and North America. Over in the Atlantic, so generally quite a cool looking Atlantic at the moment, particularly over towards Europe and Africa as well, and particularly around sort of the Bay of Biscay and Spain and Portugal, quite cold sea surface temperature anomalies there. I think that's all left over really from the cold winter that we had. This area in the tropical Atlantic is quite interesting. It's looking fairly cool there, and if that continues into the summer, it probably will have a dampening effect to some degree on the hurricane season. So still a little way off yet before we have to worry about the hurricane season. That doesn't really start getting going till July. But if that continues, those cooler than average sea surface temperature anomalies continue there, probably a slightly weaker hurricane season could be expected compared to the big season that we had last year. Now, these are the sea surface temperature anomaly forecast charts from Peng. If you watch the seasonal model roundups that we do every month, you'll know that the forecaster from NOAA, Peng, uses sea surface temperature anomalies to create analogues forecasts going forwards. And these are actually the sea surface temperature anomaly maps that he bases those forecasts on. And this is what he's forecasting in terms of the sea surface temperature anomaly for October, November, December, so for the end of the year. And he's actually forecasting quite a strong El Nino to be going by that point. It looks like Peng thinks we're going to go into, well, that's probably a moderate to borderline strong El Nino event that he's forecasting there. And also a quick change in the northeastern Pacific to a much warmer sea surface temperature anomaly up there. In the Atlantic, he's forecasting quite a big warm up in particularly the tropical Atlantic as well. So it looks like the second half of the year will shift to rather warmer oceans. But the main thing to focus on there is the forecast for a moderate to borderline quite strong El Nino that is going for. And it also looks like it's a Modoki or a Modokai El Nino, which is kind of like a more central based El Nino. So you can either get the warmest sea surface temperature anomalies with El Nino over towards the Pacific side of the equatorial, over towards the South American side, the Peruvian side of the equatorial Pacific Ocean around there. And that's kind of like a standard east-based El Nino event. But sometimes you can actually get a central-based or a Modoki El Nino event, which is where you have the strongest, warmest anomalies in the central part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. It looks like that's the kind of thing Peng is forecasting. So, not sure how reliable those sea surface temperature anomaly forecasts are, but I thought I'd just throw it in because it is quite interesting that we've got a forecaster from NOAA, which is of course, the United States Meteorological Agency. We've got a forecaster there actually going for quite a moderate Modoki El Nino by the time we get through to the end of the year. That'll be a big change from where we are right now. Of course, the ENSO update for May will be coming up towards the end of the month. Arctic oscillation observed and forecast chart next. The black line here tells where we've been with the Arctic oscillation. Red line's at the end where GFS Suble's forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. Excuse me again. Remember, this is just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere, not driving anything, just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. When the Arctic oscillation is negative, you tend to have high pressure up over the pole. You tend to have blocking signal over the pole, and so that's a colder signal, particularly in winter. When the Arctic oscillation is positive, you'll tend to have low pressure up over the pole, and essentially you're strengthening the westerlies. Where we are right now is that we're very positive with the Arctic oscillation. Started going positive around the early part of April, really, just here. But we're now very positive with the Arctic oscillation. And the GFS ensembles are forecasting us to stay very positive with the Arctic oscillation as well, going into the second half of May. Maybe right at the very ends of the GFS ensembles are trying to return us back towards neutral, but that's a long way off. And as ever with any sort of ensemble or other type forecasting, the further out you go, the more unreliable it becomes. So within the next week to 10 days, it looks like, which is sort of a reliable time frame, it looks like the Arctic oscillation will be staying in a very positive phase indeed. North Atlantic oscillation is the same idea. So again, the black line tells us where we've been with the NAO, the red lines at the end where the GWV ensembles are forecasting the NAO to go. Again, very positive with the NAO right now. That's one of the most positive NAOs that I've seen for a very long time. Actually, we've gone up to above 2 in terms of the scale here, which tells us that the setup at the moment is very sort of Atlantic based. So we've got high pressure strengthened around the Azores and low pressure strengthened around Iceland. At this time of year in summer, a positive NAO can mean either two things. If the Azores High is ridging in, throwing up ridges over the UK and the west of Europe, then it can actually be a very warm signal. A positive NAO can be a very warm and settled signal. If the Azores High is pulled away from us into the central Atlantic, then a positive NAO this time of year in the summer can actually be a very unsettled signal. So it can mean either two things, depending on the exact position of the Azores High and whether the Azores High is throwing up its ridges into West Europe. Obviously, at the moment, the Azores High is throwing up a ridge because we're having this early May. Well, I shouldn't say hot spell because it doesn't. I shouldn't say heat wave because it doesn't quite meet the requirements of a heat wave. But certainly, we're having an early May very warm spell of weather. Let's say that. GFS ensembles are forecasting the NAO to stay very positive over the next week to 10 days, and then similar to the AO, right at the very end of the ensemble forecast, maybe hinting at going a bit lower, probably still staying positive, but just easing back towards more neutral type territory. But at the moment, we have both the indexes in positive territory, very positive territory actually, which tells us that the Azores High is a major player at the moment. So, GFS ensembles, let's do some forecasting. These are the upper air temperature ensembles for Buxton, the highest town in England. We're looking at Buxton today. So, the red line here is the 30-year temperature average for Buxton in terms of the upper air temperatures. That's where we are right now, very warm with the upper air temperatures. That continues through the rest of the May Day bank holiday weekend. Really, it's going to be a super second half to the bank holiday weekend. Do make the most of it. We go through next week, we're going to see those temperatures cooling down, going back towards average through the second half of next week, possibly even going a little bit cooler than average for a few days. But then we see definite signs as we go through into the middle and then second half of the month, we see definite signs of the temperatures warming up again. So starting very warm, becoming cooler, and then going potentially quite warm again around the middle of May and into the second half of the month. As far as precipitation is concerned, rest of the bank holiday weekend looks mostly dry. Lots of dry weather coming up to go along with this very warm weather. More precipitation coming up later next week and into next weekend associated with this cooler stuff. And maybe, even though the temperatures lift up through the second half of the month, maybe still looking a little bit unsettled there. Actually, so it could be the driest spell of this month is actually going on right now. That's how the service temperatures are looking for Buxton. So in terms of the GFS ensembles, starting at around 20 degrees with our maximums at the moment. That's 20 just there. That's plus 10 down there. 20 degrees in early May at Buxton. As I say, it's the highest town in England. That's really quite warm indeed, but we do see that after another 2 days at least of very warm conditions, we're going to find those temperatures lowering. So as we go through to the end of the week and the weekend, much cooler, temperatures down just into the low teens Celsius before starting to stage a recovery. Possibly not getting back as high as they are right now, but certainly going into kind of like the upper teens Celsius again through this middle and second half of May. So essentially we've got 3 periods that we've got to concentrate on. We've got the warm period we're in right now, then we've got the cooler period that's coming up later on this week and into next weekend, and then around the middle of the month, in the second half of the month, could well go quite warm once more. Temperature anomalies for the week ahead from the 5th through to the 13th of May, coming out generally warmer than average for much of the UK, although Scotland and Northern Ireland are closer to average, but England and Wales coming out warmer than average. Significantly drier than average through most parts of the UK as well, from the 5th through to the 13th of May. A very dry precipitation anomaly. That's how the GFS is looking for Wednesday. So by Wednesday, we'll be into a more Atlantic regime. We'll have lost the hot temperatures that we've got at the moment. Still, temperatures in the east will probably be holding up close to average, but it will certainly be a lot cooler by the time we get through to the middle of the week. And then the second half of the week actually turns quite unsettled, with this area of low pressure out of the Atlantic possibly bringing some quite wet and windy weather towards the end of the week. And that continues into next weekend as well. But by Sunday, just a week's time, we find that the Azores high is again starting to strengthen and beginning to push its ridge up towards us. So this is why the North Atlantic oscillation is so positive at the moment. We've got the Azores high down there, and we've got the low pressure around Iceland up here. That is what is sending the NAO into a very positive situation. So it's always the weather that's driving the index. It's not the index that drives the weather. So by the time we get through to next weekend, we're finding the Azores high already starting to strengthen. As we go through into the extended period, look at this, we're building up another extension from the Azores high, ridging across the UK, bringing a return by the middle of the month to dry and warm conditions. Now that ridge eventually starts to move more towards our east, so we possibly begin to get some low pressure developing to our south-southeast. That's quite interesting, because that could be thundery, this area of low pressure that's developing around Germany and France. It's a long way out. It's Thursday, 17th of May, 276 hours away. That's just a suggestion that maybe, as well as turning quite warm again through the middle part of May, we might begin to generate some quite heavy showers or thunderstorms potentially as well. We go through to the end of this GFS run, and essentially we keep that big ridge up over Scandinavia, which is going to keep us quite warm. The air will continue to move in from a south or southeasterly direction. But GFS looks fairly warm, I have to say, in its extended range this morning. Now, I've had a strange ECM run, so I just talked you through that. Again, unsettled at the end of the week, so quite wet and windy, particularly on Friday. Could be a pretty wet and windy day. Those unsettled weather, the unsettled weather continues into the weekend as well. And then what this ECM run does is actually builds the heights to our west as we go into the extended range. So we're heading up towards day 10. And we get to day 10 and we look like that. So what's happening there is that we're just keeping a flat jet stream coming through. We're not getting a ridge building from the Azores high like the GFS is showing. And we're also sort of building up some heights to our north as well. So there's a little bit of northern blocking actually beginning to appear there. So that's a more unsettled and a lot cooler type pattern that we see there from the ECM as we go into the middle of May. It is a cold outlier though, so these are the GFS temperature ensembles from De Beeld in Holland, or for De Beeld in Holland. So again, this is the hot temperatures that are coming up over the next few days. Then the drop in temperature later on this week, that's showing up quite clearly. But then the ensemble mean actually wants to warm things up and go back to fairly warm territory as we go to the middle and second half of the month. This red line down here, that is actually the operational run of the ECMWF that I was just showing you. So those are the maximum temperatures. You can see they are just about the coldest. It's just about the coldest ensemble member, really. So it's significantly below in the 7 to 10 day time frame. Anyway, we're down here, and it's significantly below the ensemble mean, which is there and warming in that period. And it's just about the coolest ensemble member. So I think we can more or less discount that very chilly and unsettled extended ECM run that we're seeing this morning. Finally, I'm just going to throw in the GEM, the Canadian model, because somebody in the comments at YouTube was asking why we haven't seen the GEM for quite some time. And the reason, basically, is that at this time of year, I do shorten the videos a little bit that we do in the week, anyway. So I tend to take the GEM out. It's one of the models that turns up more in the winter. But as it's been asked about, I thought I'd just finish off with this morning's GM Canadian run. So again, same idea. We've got the unsettled weather and cool weather coming up at the end of the week, and then go through into the weekend, and we're starting to get this ridge building from the Azores high, so that generates quite a nice ridge as we go up to Monday the 14th of May. That continues into the day 10 period, but again, notice similar to the GFS, by day 10, which is Wednesday the 16th of May, the GM does have this low pressure developing around Germany and France, which is possibly threatening some heavy rain, maybe thunderstorms from the south and from the east. So we're possibly going to look out for some thundery weather coming up around the middle part of May, but that's a long way off, and I suspect in the end that low pressure would tend to be trained in away from us to our east. So 3 distinct periods that we're interested in for the next week to 10 days. The very warm weather at the moment, it's a record-breaking spell of hot weather that we've got right now for the May Day Bank Holiday weekend. It's going to go cooler and more unsettled from the middle of the week through to next weekend. Will be quite cool and unsettled, and then as we get towards the middle part of May, possibly turning quite a lot warmer again, and maybe even a little bit thundery down in the south. Right, that's your GWV Sunday Roundup. Don't forget to check out the analogues update that we've done for summer 2018. That video will be placed on the summer updates and forecast page later on today with written summary. Tomorrow we've got the historic video. Now, had a nightmare with that the other night. I was trying to record it on Friday night, and got halfway through, did the whole... We're looking at the spring and summer of 1893 against the spring and summer of 1962, two very contrasting springs and summers. So I got halfway through, I did the whole of 1893, or the spring summer of 1893. I was going to pause the video and get ready for 1962, and I stopped the video and lost the whole thing. So I'm going to have another go at recording that tonight. That will be your May Day Bank Holiday Monday historic video, if I can get everything recorded this evening. So that'll be with you tomorrow. Right, and at 31 minutes, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.